So I was wearing a fragrance the other day and I couldn't help but think, man, this smells so darn familiar. Like, where have I smelled this? I know it smells like something. And then it hit me. Why not make a fragrance review about better alternatives to famous fragrances? If that piques your interest, stick around for this one. Hey guys, welcome back to Real Scent Review. So tonight I'm bringing you 8 fragrances that are better alternatives to more well-known fragrances or famous fragrances. So just to clear up any doubt right away, this is not a clone list, although there might be 1 or 2 clones that do appear on this list, but not a clone list. In fact, these fragrances are not going to be identical to the more well-known counterpart. In some cases, there are going to be a couple of significant twists as far as scent profile goes, but each of these fragrances is going to smell similar enough to the famous counterpart that you could easily replace it in your collection as far as I'm concerned. So what are the criteria for this video? First of all, the famous fragrance has to be famous. It has to be a well-known fragrance. Second of all, the better alternative has to be widely available and at least semi-easy to find. So with that out of the way, I would like to go over 2 honorable mentions. The first being A.S.A.P by Mayora. This one here is a really good alternative to Invictus Aqua. This one has a little bit more of a maturity to it and the performance is much better. This one has notes of pine, the saltiness is turned up, and yeah, it gives a very green impression over that base of Invictus Aqua. The only problem with this one is it's almost impossible to find. But yeah, if you ever come across this A.S.A.P by Mayora, do yourself a favor and check it out. The second honorable mention is Vetiver Patchouli by Montale. Now, I'm going to exclude this one from this list because I talk about this stuff so much. It already appears in most of my list videos and I don't want it to get too tiring for you guys. So yeah, that's the reason why this one is not appearing on the list. But if I could give you a very simplistic rundown, it's like a 3-dimensional, better performing, earthier version of Terre d'Hermès Parfum, Vetiver Patchouli by Montale. Awesome fragrance. So with that out of the way, let's get to the real list. The first one is going to be Loewe Cobalt. This one here is my better alternative to Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum. So the main notes in this one are black currant, incense, and pink pepper. We get a very tart fruitiness in the opening coming from that black currant. It's somewhat similar to that citric vibe we get in the beginning of Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum. This dries down with a good amount of resinous incense that later turns into a smoky incense. And I get a lot of musky, floral, somewhat fruity pink pepper in this one as well. There also might be a little bit of vetiver, dry vetiver hanging out in the background as well. This one here is like a more mature, but just as versatile alternative to Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum. Although I do find that this one is a little bit higher quality, it's a little bit more interesting, and it's definitely a stronger performer. I would definitely recommend this one over Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum if you're looking for just a classic blue style fragrance with a little bit more depth to it, a little bit more of an interesting twist, also with better performance. And yeah, the price on this one here is actually pretty reasonable. This is Loewe Cobalt. Consider this one as a great alternative to Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum. The next one is going to be Emperor Extrait by Parfums Vintage. This one is going to be my better alternative to Creed's Aventus. Do they even still talk about Creed Aventus? So the main notes in this one are going to be pineapple, birch, and ambergris. So yeah, right in the top, we're going to get that juicy, tart pineapple that Creed Aventus is famous for. And then we're going to get some birch. We're going to get some very woody, slightly incensey birch with just an uplifting feeling to it. I love the birch note in this. It's going to lend a little bit of an aromatic vibe to this fragrance as well. In the dry down, we get some nice sea salty ambergris. My goodness, this is a wonderful rendition of Creed's Aventus. In fact, it's better than Creed's Aventus in my opinion, in my honest opinion. And it performs better. The quality is just the same. But the thing that I really like the most about this is that it smells like the older batches of Creed Aventus, which were more smoky. They were a little bit more woody than the later batches. Yeah, if we're talking about inconsistency as far as batches go, Creed Aventus has to be near the top of that list. This, to me, takes all the best components of the older Creed Aventus batches and just puts them all into one fragrance with awesome performance, great quality. This stuff here, such an uplifting fragrance. I'm here in Madrid right now. It's the middle of February. It's quite cold outside, but man, when I smell this, it just puts me in the mood for the beach. It makes me feel like I'm going to the beach on a super hot, muggy summer day. It's giving me those vibes. I can't wait for that season to come around. But until it does, I can just sit around and smell this all day, and it brings me almost all the way there. Emperor Extrait by Parfums Vintage. Definitely check this one out. Next one is going to be Boss Bottle Elixir. This one is my better alternative to Dior Sauvage Elixir. The main notes in this one are cardamom, labdanum, frankincense, and patchouli. So this one opens up with that green, spicy, warm, yet cooling cardamom. There's a little bit of a sweetness coming from the patchouli, very earthy vibe as well, with maybe just a hint of like bitter cocoa in the background as well, coming from that patchouli. Delicious, delicious, delicious. This dries down with some leathery labdanum, and there's going to be some resinous, smoky frankincense in the dry down as well. So to put it very simply, this is kind of like a Middle Eastern version of Sauvage Elixir, if I could put it that way. There's definitely a darkness to it. It's not as aromatic as Sauvage Elixir. There's definitely more of a sweetness in this one. And yeah, we get a little bit of that leathery vibe coming from the patchouli and that beautiful light smokiness and resinous quality from the frankincense. Straight up, the smell of this is absolutely incredible. The first time I smelled this, I could not believe I was smelling a Hugo Boss offering. Yeah, just a very, very impressive release from the house with this one here. However, I do say the performance on this one is not quite as beastly as Sauvage Elixir, but I mean, really, there are very few fragrances that have quite the same extreme performance as Sauvage Elixir. But yeah, you know, that's not to say this is a weak one or anything. It's an incredible fragrance, and I highly recommend this one. If you're considering Dior Sauvage Elixir and you haven't tried this one out yet, yeah, take a gander at this one. You'll be glad you did. Next one is going to be La Yuqawam by Rasasi. This is my better alternative to Tuscan Leather by Tom Ford. The main notes in this one are raspberry, leather, and incense. Yeah, we get that gasoline accord in the top coming from that bitter, tart raspberry mixed with the leather. The leather in this one it's strong. It's definitely a strong leather, but I don't consider it to be animalic. It's more reminiscent to me of a new car interior than it is to a horse saddle, for example. And then we get that beautiful, smoky, light incense in the dry down. Absolutely phenomenal fragrance. I mean, it smells the exact same as Tuscan Leather by Tom Ford. So although it's not like a challenging animalic leather, there is a little bit of a gasoline accord that can be kind of a little bit strong for some people. But yeah, if you know what Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather smells like and you enjoy it, but you don't want to cough up an arm and a leg to be able to pay for the darn thing, this one here is a super good, it's the best alternative. I affirm that this is the best alternative available. The performance is actually even better on my skin, and a lot of other people can corroborate that as well. It's just all in all a much better fragrance than Tuscan Leather in my opinion. And yeah, this is significantly more economical than Tuscan Leather as well. A couple of years ago in the fragrance community, this was all the rage, and I know it doesn't get talked about quite as often as it used to, but still, I consider this an absolute gem in perfumery. Yeah, if you like leather fragrances, you gotta pick this one up. And here we have Malbec Black by Boticario. This is my better alternative to Bulgari's Man in Black. The main notes in this one are vanilla, cinnamon, sandalwood, and cardamom. So this smells a lot like Bulgari's Man in Black. but with a huge dose of sandalwood in the dry down. So the sandalwood is going to be very woody, slightly boozy, very glossy. Yeah, it's a wonderful rendition of sandalwood in this one. Really took me by surprise, this one, especially because where I live, this is kind of an unknown fragrance brand. I mean, yeah, unfortunately, because it's freaking amazing. This is an awesome fragrance. But yeah, we get that sweet, spicy cardamom with a little bit of a green characteristic as well, and that cooling sensation that cardamom is known for. Also get some sweet, earthy, dusty cinnamon. There is also a good amount of vanilla in this, but it never at any point goes cloying. It's a very well done, I would say almost minimalist type of vanilla. And yeah, in the dry down, it's all about that sandalwood, which is something that I find is almost completely lacking in Bulgari's Man in Black. So it's like Bulgari's Man in Black, like I said, with that sandalwood twist. I find this to be actually a more well-rounded fragrance with much better performance, more depth as well compared to the Bulgari Man in Black. All in all, I just consider this to be the superior fragrance here. This one also has some boozy characteristics. There also might be like a touch of smoke in the background. But yeah, it's interesting because the fragrances from this line, Malbec, the alcohol, the perfumer's alcohol used in these fragrances, aged in Malbec wine casks before blending. So that's where the name comes from. And it does add a kind of a boozy, like I said, a boozy characteristic to the scents from this line. Awesome, awesome, awesome fragrance line. This is like super underrated, almost unknown where I am at least. And yeah, you guys really need to be checking this out, because the other thing is this is much more economical than Bulgari's Man in Black, and the same goes for all the other members of this line and the house in general of Boticario. Super underrated house, even though I know in South America they're quite popular, in Portugal as well they're quite popular. But yeah, guys, those of you in other regions of the world, you really need to do yourselves a favor and check out this house. Next up, we have Bon Monsieur by Rogue Perfumery. This is my better alternative to Drakkar Noir, also known as the most famous aromatic 80s fougere of all time. So the main notes in this one are lavender, fir, carnation, and oak moss. So yeah, this is an aromatic fougere through and through. We get that sweet, spicy, aromatic lavender. Wonderful. I also get a big dose of carnation, which is like a very spicy, kind of minty floral. And I love it. It really works with that lavender. There's also like a floral characteristic to it, sure, but it's so masculine. It's like pure masculinity in a bottle here. If you like the smell of classic aromatic fougères, you're gonna love this, especially because we get a good amount of fir. So it smells like pine needles. It's kind of like a wintry, foresty vibe in a way. Awesome, awesome. And my favorite part of the fragrance is the oak moss in the dry down. Yeah, it's a stunning fragrance. It smells a lot like Drakkar Noir, but it's more three-dimensional. There's more depth to this one, and the performance is definitely better than Drakkar Noir. So yeah, a little bit about the house of Rogue Perfumery. If you guys are fans of Chypre fragrances and classic aromatic fougere style fragrances, you really need to check out Rogue Perfumery for some of the best oak moss that you can get in modern perfumery. This house is just full of super good classic style perfume options for you gentlemen who enjoy those genres. So yeah, you're gonna want to check out Rogue Perfumery. The penultimate offering on this list is Oud Musk by Montale. This is going to be my better alternative to Oud Wood by Tom Ford. The main notes I get are musk, vetiver, ebony wood, and amber. So yeah, a long time ago, I did a review comparing this Oud Musk to Duro by Nascimato. I definitely do get similarities between these two fragrances. However, it wasn't until fairly recently that I was struck by the realization that this bears some extreme similarities to Oud Wood by Tom Ford as well. They are not absolutely identical, but I think this is a perfect substitute or alternative to Oud Wood by Tom Ford. So we get a lot of muskiness in this one, mixed with like a medicinal, very dry vetiver. There's also a large dose of ebony wood. So the ebony wood in this one is going to take the place of the oud in Oud Wood by Tom Ford. Ebony wood, it's a very dark, very bitter wood with almost a charred characteristic. Not quite as charred and burnt as guaiac wood, for example, but there definitely is like a smoky kind of burnt wood accord coming from this ebony wood, along with just the woody, dark bitterness. Really, really, really interesting note. I absolutely love the way it's done in this fragrance here. And in the dry down, we definitely do get some amber. So the amber is going to sweeten things up a little bit. It's like a little bit sweeter, I would say, than oud wood and slightly less smoky. But yeah, all in all, this is a more rounded kind of alternative to Tom Ford's oud wood, yet the performance is much better. It's more rounded, yet it's deeper. It's more three-dimensional, I find. And also, you know, needless to say, the price is a lot more economical as well. I absolutely recommend this one over Oud Wood by Tom Ford any day of the week. It's absolutely one of my favorite offerings from the House of Montale, and I recommend it to you guys if you like the Oud Wood kind of DNA from Tom Ford, but you want something just better, in my opinion. Check this one out. So last but not least, we have the Black Knight by Francesca Bianchi. This is my better alternative to Gucci Guilty Absolute. So the main notes in this one are vetiver, leather, iris, and guaiac wood. So if you're a fan of Gucci Guilty Absolute, but you want a more powerful and complex fragrance that smells quite similar, look no further than the Black Knight. Upon initial spray, we're met with a very strong mixture of vetiver and leather. It's going to be a dry green vetiver and an oily kind of animalic leather. Going to be very reminiscent of that medicinal opening of Gucci Guilty Absolute. But this one here also has the addition of iris. Actually, it's orris root, but yeah, it's very similar to the smell of iris. Going to be very powdery, very makeup-y, very deep, dense, almost hot, spicy, powdery thing going on, which in a way also reminds me of Dior's Homme Parfum, but I don't want to get sidetracked. And in the dry down, we get some burnt, smoky guaiac wood. This stuff here, one of the most powerful and complex fragrances I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing. I definitely do get those Gucci Guilty Absolute vibes, but this is a much more complex fragrance. There's a lot more going on in this one than just the medicinal mixture of the leather and the vetiver. This has a lot of depth to it. The simplified note breakdown that I've just given does not give this fragrance justice. In fact, I think you should go check out my full review that I've recently done of this fragrance. It is a masterpiece. But yeah, if you're a fan of things like Gucci Guilty Absolute or even Black Incense Malaki by Chopard and Dior Homme Parfum, you are going to love this fragrance. I get facets of all three of them, but the fragrance that I am most reminded of is definitely the Gucci Guilty Absolute. Medicinal quality, it's got an animalic, oily leather to this one, very strong. And to top it all off, we get a wonderfully, maybe unexpected mixture of that soft, powdery, makeup-y orris root and the smoky burnt guaiac wood. This is a phenomenal dry down. It's a dry down to die for. Very powerful fragrance though. Don't say I didn't warn you. But yeah, this is the Black Knight by Francesca Bianchi. If you're serious about fragrances, you gotta check this fragrance out and the house in general. Francesca has so many amazing offerings. But yeah, that's where I'm gonna leave it for tonight, guys. So that's been my list of 8 better alternatives to famous fragrances. Not a comprehensive list. There are many, many, many more I could have added here, but I just kind of wanted to keep it a little bit simple, condense it down to 8 for you guys. What are your opinions? What are your better alternatives to famous fragrances out there? It can be clones, it can be fragrances that aren't quite identical, but still kind of have the same vibe. Yeah, anyway, guys, leave your recommendations and opinions down in the comment section, please. It's been a pleasure going over this list with you guys, and until next time, keep it real.